Hello everyone, hope you all are doing great and welcome to this new video series on Stocks app where we're going to be building a clone of Stocks app that's present in your phone. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pulling live stock market data using an API called Alpha Vantage. And we're going to be basically displaying the current list of watched stocks in this watch list. And this has a so you're going to be building a local search, so you can, if you have a really long watch list, you can search for those items. You can add new items, so by typing, for example, let's say Oracle, and you'll be able to basically get the list of all the companies that are listed under name ORAC, with the prefix ORAC, and it's going to give you all the companies, so you can add those. You can dismiss your search dialog, and then your stock starts to show up here. And now as you have built have started building your watch list, you might also want to keep an eye on what's going on in the market with the news. So you have a news section right here, and this news section downloads news from News API. So you're going to be learning how to integrate News API and how to build basically this dialog box where it shows up, and you can click on each items to basically look at what's going on with the news. And you also have at the top your current stock market status, or current symbol that you're watching, their status. So you can actually, it's a scrollable list, so as the list grows, basically you're gonna be able to look at all the stock market while keeping up to date with the news. And when you're done, you can simply swipe your news section down and be done with it. So this is the app that we are going to be building. And as you can see, there are a lot of components that are going on in here. And you have two different APIs being called. So there's one for news, there's another one for actual stock market. So you're gonna see how you can handle basically networking calls, code restructuring or code management, and code breakdown for your apps of this size. I mean, this is not a big size of app, but you're gonna notice how quickly it will, how much code is gonna go in there to build out this. So you're gonna be seeing and learning about a whole bunch of things. So next we're gonna be talking about learning objectives that we're gonna be covering in this video course. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the learning objectives for this course. So we are definitely going to be learning SwiftUI because all of our views are written in SwiftUI. So we're going to be learning about that. We're going to be learning about advanced usage of Codable protocol. So if you have seen our other video courses, you might have already experienced how to use Codable protocol with JSON decoder when you download something from the APIs and use Codable for network programming. In this course, we're going to be looking at how you can define your own coding keys for the use case when your key itself do not follow a standard. So you're gonna see how Alpha Vantage has a little bit different out of the ordinary or out of the standard JSON response, and you're gonna learn how to handle those cases. For example, they have numbers to start the key with, and there are spaces and stuff like that. So you're gonna see how you can leverage the power of Codable protocol and coding keys to better manage what you're decoding. You're going to be learning about how to make generic network managers. So like I mentioned, we have two different APIs here. So you have your news that's coming from a different API and your stock status that's coming from a different API. And those two are two different resources, two different network calls, but we're going to be using a common network manager to make all the API calls. So you're going to be learning how to create a generic network manager that responds to any of the net API call that you require. So you're going to be creating that, and you're going to be basically when your responses are received, you're going to create these combined backed observable API call managers that actually would observe for the changes. So instead of using completion blocks, you're going to be using combined backed observable and publisher attributes of combine to basically learn, observe, and react to the changes that are happening in your data model. You're going to be using protocols to basically create a mock API manager. So the reason I'm including this one here because the Alpha Vantage API itself has a limit of 5 calls per minute and 500 calls per hour. So when you're developing, you might have to make the API call multiple times. So it's better to create a protocol and adopt a mock API manager, and basically then instead of returning actual results by calling the API, you can return mock responses. This is also gonna help you in unit tests. So if you write unit tests for this, you're gonna basically learn that how you can create your unit tests around this mock API calls instead of using network-based API calls. You're going to be basically learning about creating an async image downloader that'll download images from the internet, and we're going to be using that to download images for our news section. And you're also going to learn image caching techniques to basically cache your network images that you have recently downloaded, so you don't have to download them over and over. You're gonna learn to use user defaults to save array of stock symbols. So that's what we are doing. Whenever your user adds a new stock symbol, we are going to save the stock symbol into user defaults, and then we're going to retrieve those stock symbols from user defaults and display the stock status for that. So user defaults is a perfect place for this kind of data because it's not too big of a data, and it's fast enough actually, and it's persistent between app launches. So your users watch list is never going to be lost. And then you're gonna have learn about SwiftUI view composition. So basically combining various different views to build a complex view. You're going to be learning how to create reusable view components for SwiftUI, and you're going to be creating a sort of like a custom text field and a search field that's going to be reused over and over, both between this page when you're doing local search and another page when you're adding new stock or searching for new stock symbol to add. So both are using same component, so you're going to learn how to create that. And we are also going to be using Swift Package Manager to download this to basically add a dependency of this Safari view, which is much more sophisticated, and there's a package available. So we will actually see how we can use that to open the news inside the Safari view. Okay, so those are all gonna be this is the learning objective for this course. So hopefully you can have a lot of fun building out this app with me. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so before we start our project, I want to show you the APIs that we're going to be using so you can get yourself the API keys for both. So for news section, we're going to be using newsapi.org. There is an entire video course if you want to see how to develop a news app from scratch. Check out the other courses for that. But yeah, this is going to be the news API that we're going to be using. And News API is a free API, at least for developing for developers. You get a free API. It's totally free, so there's no credit card required. By the way, we don't have any affiliations with all these. We just use the API. That's why we know about it. But yeah, so the good part about News API is you can search based on different criterias. One of the things that we're going to be using is business category. So we're going to get top business headlines in US by using this API link or endpoint for top headlines, country US, category business. So you can actually customize your app to make it available for different places, different countries, by providing your user a selection option where they can choose which country they want. Or if you want global, you can remove that and just have the category as business, and you get world business news. Okay, so this is going to be the API endpoint that we're going to be using with News API. So go ahead and just click on Get API Key and get yourself an API key. Once again, it's free. So that's going to be the first API, and the other API for the stocks is going to be Alpha Vantage. So this API is, let me show you the documentation. It provides a really in-depth look into what's going on in stock market, and you can once again claim your API key by going into this link, API key, and select the area which describes you the best, and then select your organization and email address and generate get free API key, and they'll actually give you API key right here. So you get the API key. Once you have the API key, you would come back to the documentation, and they have various different examples. For example, intraday, extended history, daily adjusted, weekly. So all these are stock time series, basically what's going on with the stock on daily, monthly basis and hourly basis actually. So if you see this intra day is actually minutes, is separated by minutes, so you can have an API call that actually will give you response every 5 minutes. Now we're not going to be using this because Alpha Vantage, one of the thing that I told you about earlier is that if you're on the free tier, then you only have 5 calls per minute and 500 calls at max. If in case you would like to go ahead and go beyond that limit, go ahead and get yourself a license, a production level license, and then you can use that, or find an alternative like API key. And you please do share, so we all will learn if you find another stocks API. Anyways, so the thing that we're going to be using is going to be quotes. So there's one for quotes endpoint, and this quotes endpoint. So if you click on this, it's a demo API, but this is what the response looks like. So you can have for example, IBM. If you're looking for, it's going to give you current status of IBM, and you can have open, high, low, price, current price, and the volume and latest trading day and stuff like that available right here. And along with that, you're going to have changes and percentage change. Now, if you notice, these keys are rather odd. They have space, they have dot, they start with zeros and stuff like that. So this is where we're going to see how we can leverage the power of Codable to better manage these keys. So this is going to be the one API endpoint that we're going to be using, quotes endpoint. Another endpoint that we're going to be using is going to be search endpoint. This is where you actually provide the searched keyword, and then it will give you the results back, and then you can use those results to basically populate your results area. And upon selection, like we are doing in our app, we're going to add that into our watch list array, and then we're going to use that. Okay, so this, if you click on this, this has another response, so it actually gives you best matches, and along with that it gives you, like, various different attributes for each match. Okay, so you also, it also gives you, like, whether it's equity or ETF and stuff like that. So this one is all equity based for the demo API key. But yeah, once you have your API key, simply replace this demo with your own API key, and you will be good to go. So these are going to be two APIs that we're going to be using. Go ahead and check this documentation out. Like I said, they have, like, really extended, or like, in-depth look into the stock market with their APIs. So if you're interested, like, you can try out all these other areas. For example, you have this one that actually gives you every 5 minutes. It gives you, like, the state of the market, so you can actually use this one as well. Okay, so that's the look into the APIs that we're going to be using. Up next, we're going to start building our project into Xcode. All right, so what I've got is is an empty project that I've created, and in this project there is nothing, so we're gonna start from the from scratch. Okay, so what we're gonna do basically is we're gonna first set up our folder structure, and then we are going to basically start coding up our app. Okay. So what we're going to do in this case, because we have a rather large app, I want to divide this the folder structure into features. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new group, and we can call this one features. Okay, and each feature is going to have its own model and its own views. Folders, subfolders. So for example, we're gonna add another group, and the first group that we're gonna add, so this one is, for example, maybe it'll be quotes. So this is our daily quotes, and inside this quotes, we're gonna have models and views. Okay, and we're gonna follow the similar structure. So we're gonna need one for search, and search is gonna have its own models and views. We're gonna need another one for news. And basically what this structure is gonna help you if and when you're ready to grow your app and include more features, then you can simply start including more features inside this and start connecting those. Now, along with features, we are also going to need some utilities, um, and basically our network generic network manager, user default manager, there's an extension for arrays. All these things are basically going to go inside another folder called utils. So I'm going to create another folder called utils, and this is where we are going to be putting our common stuff. Okay. All right. So with that, our folder structure is pretty much ready. So let's go ahead and start with our feature. So let's start with our quotes model first, and we're gonna have, like, API and a couple of protocols and stuff, and we are also going to create network manager. So let's go ahead and start there one by one. So I guess, like, it makes sense to create our generic network manager first, because we're going to be needing that to call course to call in the course manager. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing next. All right, so let's go ahead and create our network manager first, because we're going to need that inside our course. So I'm going to add a new file here, and I'm going to select Swift file, and we are going to name this one network manager. Okay. Now this import from foundation is fine. We're going to create a final class because we are not planning to inherit from this, and that's actually going to help you help the compiler uh, make make it run fast, basically, for the final classes, because there's no virtual table involved. Um, okay, now this network manager is going to be generic, which is going to be requiring a type of codable to be resolved or constrained to. So whenever you're creating this network manager, you have to provide a definition of T, and this T is going to be a constraint to codable, and this is going to basically help us write this generic version of network manager. Okay, and for more info about generics, check out my other video course on mastering generics. But let's go ahead and continue here. So we're going to have one function called fetch, and it's going to fetch from a URL, which is going to be provided by the user, and it's going to give us a completion handler. Now this completion is going to be escaping, and it's going to return a result type. Now this result type is going to be of type D and network error. Now we don't have network error, so let's go ahead and create that network error. So that's what I'm going to do next, is create an enum called network error. It's going to be conforming to error protocol, and you can have few cases. For example, you're going to have error case, which is going to provide the error in string format. There's going to be invalid response. There's going to be invalid data and decoding error, like so. Okay, so as you can see, our error is gone now. Now what we're going to do inside is we're going to use URL session data task to get the data from the URL that has been provided by the user, and we're going to basically use JSON decoder to decode that response according to T. So we're going to get the data from the response, and we can transform that data into an object using JSON decoder. And because T is codable, it is going to decode that into a JSON object. Okay, that's what codable is for. So we're going to simply create URL session, shared session. We're going to use data task, and the one that we're going to use is going to be data task that takes a URL and gives us a completion handler. So we're going to use that, and we're going to supply our URL that we have received from the user, and this gives us in the completion block data, response, and error. Okay, now we're gonna be watching out for a few things, so let's go ahead and guard ourselves from different error scenarios. So we're gonna say guard error is nil, then only proceed, otherwise call the completion with failure. And in this case, network error is going to have error, and for the error string we're going to use error force unwrap this. And reason we are force unwrapping here, because The only reason, the reason that we got into this block right here, because error is not nil. So that means that error is going to be successfully, um, we're going to be successfully unwrap this with the exclamation and then provide localized description or get the localized description from that. Now we do want to return from here because we don't want to continue. So that's going to be first case. Now we also want to guard against response type. So we're going to take and create an object called HTTP response. So the response that you get is URL response. So you're going to change this to HTTP URL response. And you're going to use that HTTP response that you have recently unwrapped and check the status code on it to be 200. If either of these fails, so for example, if your response is not of type HTTP URL response, or if it's the status, if the status code is not 200, in that case, this code block is going to be called, and we're going to once again call completion with failure, and this time we're going to say it's invalid response with the response as response dot description. Okay. Next, we're going to check if there is anything in data. So once again, another guard statement, and we're going to create data out of data. So you can do that. And if data is nil, we're going to return another completion failure with invalid data, and make sure to return from here. Okay. Now, if we have made it so far, that means we have something in data and we are ready to decode. So we're gonna put do try catch here. So let's put do catch first. And if there is any error, we're gonna once again call the failure, and we're gonna say this time it's a decoding error, and we're gonna take the error and get a localized description and return that. And we are also going to print the error. Okay. Now, one thing I want to make sure that we do is we call resume on it. Now let's talk about this do section right here. So, like I mentioned earlier, when we create the network manager has to resolve the type T. So it has to provide T. That's part of the generic. We are writing it in a generic way. That means that T has to conform to something. T has to be constrained to be conforming to codable protocol. That means basically T is going to be inheriting or extending that codable protocol and conforming to that protocol, which is going to give JSON decoder ability to decode that object. So simply this, just with this constraint, it gives us ability to get the JSON from that object that we have received, this data object, and we can use JSON decoder dot decode, and we can simply say t dot self. So just call on t self, that's going to be the type, and convert data into that type t. And for the completion, we are going to call this time success. And if you notice, the success says it has to be decodable and encodable type. So we are saying that the result is going to be of type T, and T is codable, which is basically made of decodable and encodable protocols. That means here what we get is a decodable type T. Okay, so we are simply going to take our JSON and return that. And if you notice, JSON is decodable and encodable. And that's about it. So that's what you're gonna basically use. So this network manager is what you're gonna be using to make your network API calls. And this reason we have done all of this to make it easy for us to make API calls, and you're gonna see like, when we're gonna start writing those API calls for quotes and news and stuff, and for search, of course, that how easy it is for us to simply call the network manager, give it a URL, call the fetch on it, and we get the JSON response back. Okay, so with that, our network manager is complete. So next we're gonna start working on our models for the quotes section. Okay, so I'll continue there. All right, so before we build our model, let's go ahead and take a look at what the API looks like. So if you look at the API for global quote, you notice that it is a key value pair, and the key itself has a space in it for the main key for the global quote, and for the symbol, it has number. It starts with a number and a space. Okay, so we need to handle these cases. So what we're gonna do is first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new file inside our model, and we're going to call this one global quote response, or let's call it global quote right now. Okay, so import from foundation is good. We're going to create a struct global quote response, which is going to be conforming to quotable, and it's going to have a quote. Okay, and for now I'm going to create it as a string type. We're going to change that, but before we change and create a custom quote object, we're going to first create our coding keys, which is going to conform to string and coding key protocol. Okay, and we're going to say simply that quote key is going to be represented inside the JSON as global space quote. Okay, so that is going to basically create the mapping for us. So whatever we get in the JSON as a global quote, we're going to map it to quote. Okay, now let's go ahead and create our struct for quote, and then we're going to move it into another file. Okay, we're going to have symbol, okay, and now we're going to create a private enum coding keys for this as well. Coding key, and we're going to have some cases. So let me go ahead and copy paste those cases. This is what we represent. 01 represent for symbol, 02 open, then you have close. Okay, yeah, close is basically high. Let me take a look at the API one more time. Symbol open high, so we can actually say this as high. Open high, low, price, and change percent. Okay, so that's good. This is what I am referring to. So I'm referencing this. So 01 is symbol, 02 is open, 03 is high, 04 is low, 05 is price, 09 is change, and 10 is change percent. Yes. Okay. Awesome. So that is our quote model, and we're going to simply say this is going to be of type quote. All right, so that's our quote model. Next up, we're going to create our API and manager protocol to basically start downloading these quotes from the Advantage. All right, so we have our models ready. What we're going to do first thing is, before we forget, let's move this into its own file. So we're going to create a new cert file, and all right, Xcode stuck. Let me wait for it to come back. Okay, so now it's responding. Quote.swift, and what we're going to do is we're going to simply take this and move it inside its own file. That's it. Okay, let's go ahead and try to build, and everything should succeed. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we will create let's create a folder for managers, and this is where we're gonna keep our quote manager and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and create first a file called API. So we're going to keep all the API related stuff in here. So just create API.swift, and import foundation is good. We're going to create a struct API, and we will have a few properties and functions in here. Okay. So the purpose of this struct is to provide the base URL and symbol search and quote search stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to simply create a static variable base URL of type string, and this is going to return the AlphaVantage base URL. Okay, so when you go into the API, this is the base URL that's common for all the API calls. So we're gonna put that, and then we're gonna create a function for symbol search. So let's create an enum first, because we're gonna have a few symbols, few functions. They're called like functions in AlphaVantage, and functions represent like what type of endpoint it is. For example, it's a symbol search or it's a global quote. So we're going to simply create a an enum called symbol function, which is going to be of type string, and there's going to be two cases. So this is going to be a search, and this one is going to be the symbol search. So let me show you where I'm getting all this information. So if you go on the documentation once again and go to the quotes endpoint, if you notice this section right here is common for all the other queries up until query, right? And then you have this thing called function. This function represents some endpoint, the action that we want to take or type of data that we want to get. And global quote is one of the function, right? So if you look at search, okay, there it is. So if you look at search, function is symbol search. So you're simply gonna take that and put it in here, okay? And there's gonna be another case for this global quote. So I'm gonna copy this one, and I don't need this, so I can close this. Quote, and this is going to be a global quote. Okay, Now this is basically going to help us create those functions that we need. So we can simply create functions now. So static func symbol search URL, and symbol search URL is going to be for search key of type string, and this is going to return a string. Okay, so we can construct the URL right here, or what we can do is we can create a private function that's actually going to give us this based on the enum. Okay, so we can simply say private static func URL by symbol function search key is string, and this is going to return us a string, and we're gonna simply put a switch statement, and the switch statement is going to be on symbol. So cases are going to be search, and for the search case we're going to return, and this is where we're going to construct our URL. So we're going to use we're going to basically return a string right here. So first it's going to be base URL, okay, then there's going to be function. So base URL does not have a query. Okay, so let's take a look at the documentation one more time. Because I want to make sure that we get the correct URL. So let's see, code search. Okay, so there's a question mark. So there's a question mark after query. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a question mark right here, so we don't have to do that for all the other URLs. And then we're gonna have function. So base URL function is equal to symbol dot raw value, because we want the string value of the symbol. So if search is applied, then we're gonna get search symbol search as the value, and then we're gonna supply the API key. Okay, and the API key is going to be the key, and key we have not defined, so let's go ahead and create an extension for this API, and we're gonna create a static variable called key, and this is where you're gonna store your key, the key that you're going to be using, that you have obtained from AlphaVantage. This is your API key, and the keywords. So if you're searching for something, then you need to provide keywords. So that's called keywords, and this is where we can supply our search key. Okay, so that is going to be our URL, and for the other case, so instead of default, we're gonna have quotes case, and I'm gonna take this and copy it because most of the things are gonna be same, except symbol. So this is called symbol, and the search key is basically the symbol that you're looking for. So we're simply gonna change that, and rest of everything else is gonna be same. Okay, so now back to our symbol search, we can simply call this function URL by symbol, and we're gonna say this is search and the search key is the search key that has been supplied to us. Okay, similarly, we're gonna create a static function for quote URL. Okay, all right. So that's our API, and basically it's gonna provide us all the URLs, and it's gonna be some sort of a helper function for us to make our API calls. Next, we're gonna create our protocol that's going to basically download the codes for us, and then a concrete and mock implementation for that protocol. Okay, all right. So before we forget, I want to mention that I have added my key in here, and then now key has an actual value that is going to be basically used. So make sure you add your key inside your API, so the API can understand basically who is it who's calling this. Okay, all right, with that, let's go ahead and continue forward. We're gonna create first a quote manager protocol. So all right. So what Code Manager protocol is going to have is basically two functions or two things that are going to be common for our implementers to implement. So whoever is going to conform to this protocol have to provide codes and a way to download stocks. So we're going to do just that. So we're going to create our protocol, Quote Manager protocol, and it's going to have quote, a property which is going to be gettable and settable, and we also going to have a function called download, which is going to take an array of stocks that needs to be downloaded, and a completion handler which is going to be of type escaping, and this is going to return a result of quote. So you can, so I'm actually doing this for in case if you don't want to include combined way of downloading it, but so I want to actually make this function available for both use cases. So in case like result, um, oh yeah, okay, um, that is my bad, should be like this. Okay. All right, so what reason we are having this completion, although we don't need it because we're gonna make code published, but uh, in case if you want your download to be like called where you need the data of the download, then you can use the completion to get the access to results that has been retrieved, so you don't have to requery it. So that's one way of doing it, so I'm just keeping it so both ways are available. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and create our stock. So first, let's create our mock quote manager. So that's the one that we're going to use for our implementations, because once again, Alpha Vantage has a lot of restrictions on how many API calls you can make, so we don't want to hit that. So that's why I'm gonna just work with mock first, and then we're gonna come back and change that mock to the actual implementation. Okay, so we're gonna say mock quote manager as the file name. Now this mock quote manager class is going to be a final class, and it is going to be an observable object because we are going to be publishing the quotes value. So quotes value we're going to publish, and we're going to initialize it with an empty array. Now let's go ahead and fix this so we can have the other download function available. And I'm going to move this download function down here, and here we are going to basically create two mock responses. So let's create one for Apple, the APL, and we're gonna give it the symbol AAPL. Let's give open 135.90, and this is basically going to be a string, and this is also a string. High is 136.39, 133.77, 135.13. Just some mock data. .26, and the percentage change, we're gonna say negative 0.1. Okay, and yeah, percent. And we're gonna use the same, and I'm gonna create one for Google. So Google, its stock symbol is GOOG, and we're gonna use that. So GOOG, and open is gonna be, so let me see, it's gonna be 2099, so 2099.51. High is gonna be 2102, 2102. Okay, so these are going to be the values. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a for loop for 0 to less than 5 or less than 8 actually, and I'm going to repeat these. So I'm going to say quotes dot append, and I'm going to use the contents of, so append contents of Apple and Google. Okay, so what this is going to give us is basically a mock data with multiple records. Okay, all right, so this is our mock download, mock quote manager that we're going to be using. Okay, and let's go ahead and create a concrete implementation for quote as well. So we're going to create a stock quote manager. Okay, so stock quote manager is basically going to be the one that's going to implement concretely. So it's basically going to call the network manager API. Okay, so we're going to once again create a final class. Okay, let's go ahead and wait for the fix to appear. Okay, and this is going to be a published once again, we're gonna initialize it with empty. And for the download, what we're gonna do is first we're gonna create a variable to keep the quotes value. Okay, then we're gonna create a queue, a dispatch queue, where we're gonna perform the download. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna use dispatch group to download basically all the stocks. And if you notice, or if you remember, the stock quote, the global quote API is a single API call. So basically, what happens is you can only call one API at a time, so one symbol at a time. So you have to call each symbol individually. The problem that it presents is basically you're gonna have data downloaded on multiple concurrent threads, and it's available at different times. So we're gonna be using dispatch queue and dispatch group to basically synchronize that and populate all these stock values that has been requested and then publish them all at once. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to first create a queue, and it's going to be a dispatch queue. Give it a unique label, a unique label. So you can identify which queue it is. Download group is going to be a dispatch group, which is going to be responsible for notifying us when all the downloads are finished. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take these stocks. So let me change this to stocks. The stocks start for each, and inside the for each we get individual stock. So we're gonna first say download group dot enter to indicate that we are now entering inside the group. So download is now being performed, and we're gonna first construct the URL. So URL with string API dot quote URL for stock. Okay, and this is gonna give us the URL. Okay, then we're gonna call our network manager, and we're gonna give this network manager type. So this is first time we are using our network manager that we created. And if you remember, network manager itself is a generic, so it takes a codable type. So we're gonna give this a global quote response codable type. So we're gonna say this is the type that is gonna uh, be, and this is the type T is gonna be basically, and then we're gonna fetch. So fetch from URL, and for the completion block we get the result back. Okay, now when we get the result back, we simply put a switch statement on the result itself, and we say case. If in case of failure we get the error. Now we do want to print the error to see what's going on, and we also want to call download queue dot async, and we want to leave. So download group dot leave, download group dot leave, because we are done with this one. Okay, and similar for success. In case of success, we get the response, and we want to call the download queue dot async, and we're gonna say queues dot quotes dot append response dot quote. Okay, and download group dot leave. Okay, so this is basically going to indicate that we are we're going to use internal quote. Okay, and internal quotes actually. So we're gonna append into this one. Okay, and so once we are done with all the downloads, we're gonna come out of the for each loop, right? And all the stocks that we have downloaded, they have been basically stored inside this internal code. So what we gonna do is first we're gonna call our download group, and we're gonna notify for the on the queue for the work. So dispatch queue dot global. So on the global queue, we wanna basically execute completion with success, and we wanna provide the internal quotes. So if you're looking for, like, a set of quotes that has been downloaded just now, we're gonna actually provide that in success, and we are also gonna call dispatch queue dot main dot async, and here we're gonna call our quotes and append contents of internal quotes. Okay, so we go also append those values. Now let me go ahead and check it out what it is. Okay, so in our protocol we call this stock, so let's change it to stocks. That's what it's complaining about, and now it should be happy. Yes, so build succeeds. So once again, for the concrete implementation of Code Manager, we are going to first create a download queue and a group, and we're gonna perform our download on that queue, and a group we are creating so we can do all the downloads at once. And when all the downloads are done, we're gonna notify that hey, downloads are done, and, like, all the data has been gathered, so now we can actually use that data. So with main on the main thread, we're gonna basically append on the queues, which is the published property. So basically new value will become available, and whoever is observing the changes for this quotes will be able to refresh themselves. Okay, so that's the purpose. So you use download group basically to group multiple work items that have been called on the asynchronous thread, to basically combine them and call them, like, as a collective initiative, and then return one response or notify when they're all finished. Okay. All right, so this was our stock quote manager. So next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on our quotes screen to see what we have. Like, so we'll start working on the views for quotes. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on the views. So we can basically create a new group here for the home view. So for the home views, and let's go ahead and first create all the components that we're gonna need. So first one we are going to create is going to be the home or header view. So I'm gonna select Swift UI view, header view, and let's go ahead and try the canvas. Let's see if we can actually build it out on canvas this time. Okay. All right, so it seems to be loading. We're gonna create first a date formatter, and this date formatter is going to return us a specific format for the date. So we're going to say date format, and we only need month and day, and we're going to return this formatter Excel. Okay. Next thing we are going to need is basically stocks. So I'm going to create a binding for stocks, right? And we're going to have a state variable to keep track of search. So um, this is basically if we want to show the search or not. So this is basically going to come in handy when we create our search view. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and see. We need to pass these stocks. So I'm going to simply say constant. Okay. All right. Now here, what we're going to do is we're going to create an H stack first with a V stack, and let's try alignment for this is going to be leading spacing. It's going to be -5, and then we're going to have a text which is going to be stocks. Let me go ahead and refresh with Command Control P. Okay, and then we're gonna give the foreground color to be white. You don't see anything. That is just fine. We're gonna see it in a minute. So let me go ahead and give this a background for now. Color dot black. Okay, and we're gonna make this bold, and then we're gonna show our date. So we're gonna use um, text for date, and we're gonna say it's gonna be the date, current date, and we're gonna have the formatter, and this formatter is going to have it's going to be the date formatter. So it's gonna basically create a date according to the formatter that we have created. So February 16th, for example, in this case. Okay, and we're gonna make this bold, and for the entire thing we're gonna give the font as title. Okay, and then we are going to have a spacer. All right, and after the spacer we're gonna have a button. Now this button is going to have two things. Okay, so it's gonna have an action. So action is gonna be empty at this point because this is where we're gonna, oh, actually we can populate this. So show search dot toggle. Okay, which is gonna just toggle this show search, which is gonna help us launch the sheet that is going to display the search bar or search view, basically where you can search for the stock symbols. And we're gonna have an image uh, system name plus. Okay, and gonna give it a font as title and foreground color as white. Okay, and I'm gonna attach a sheet to this with is presented as show search, and for the content we are going to simply say search view will go here. Okay, we also need on dismiss. Okay, so on dismiss, and this guy for now is going to be empty, but we're going to come back and populate this when we start saving our data. Basically, when we start saving our stocks that we have searched into the user default. Okay, so we're gonna leave it empty for now, and yeah, so this is our uh, stocks header. Okay, as you can see, it needs some padding, like some background and stuff. So we're gonna we can actually remove the background now, because this is all gonna go on the black background. So this that uh, background that I added here was temporary, and we're gonna have, like, when we place this into our main content view, at that point you will see it, it'll actually be visible at that time. Okay, cool. So next, what we're gonna create is gonna be a text view, which is gonna be used for search. So for the text view, we need to create a custom text field. So we're gonna create that custom text field first. That's coming up next. All right. So let's go ahead and create a custom field. So I think I'm gonna create a custom text view here in utils, because it's gonna be basically common control. And this custom text field is going to be a SwiftUI view. So we're going to name this one custom text field. Okay. And we can, yeah, we can take out the preview. Don't need that. You're going to have a placeholder. This is going to be a text, and we're going to have a binding. Now, reason we are creating this custom text field, because at this point the text field does not allow you to set the background, and basically whenever you have your background changing, or color modifications within the background or the placeholder text, that's not possible. But with this, we are going to be able to create that effect where placeholder text color is also customizable. Okay, um, so we're gonna create a binding for text, and we're gonna have two closures, one for editing change and one for commit. So editing changed, which is going to give us boolean, and it's gonna return void, and we're gonna simply create that empty, and that's gonna be commit closure, which is going to be just empty, and we're gonna initialize that as well. Okay, for the body, we're gonna have a Z stack with alignment as leading, and we're gonna say if text is empty, right, then we want to show the placeholder. Okay, otherwise we don't. And then we're gonna create our text field with empty string. Text is going to be the text binding on editing changed. We're gonna call editing changed. On commit, we're gonna call commit. Okay, let's go ahead and build. Everything should succeed. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna basically next we're gonna create our search text view, which is gonna use this custom. All right, so let's go ahead and create our search text view. So I'm gonna create a new file once again inside the home. Select SwiftUI view. We're gonna call this one search text view. Okay, and search text view is basically going to use the view that we have just created. Okay, so it's gonna take a binding for search term of type string. Okay, and then it's gonna have a custom text field placeholder will be text search, and let's go ahead and fix this. So I'm gonna once again create a constant value with nothing, empty. Okay. All right. So let's give it a foreground color of color dot gray. Okay. And for the text, we are going to bind it to search term. Okay. That's going to be our custom text field. So that's our text field. And so if you notice, we have a gray color. You can change this to green color. So that's actually the benefit of having a custom text field, because you have your placeholder text customizable. I'm going to change it back to gray, and then we're going to give it a foreground color of white, padding to be leading 40 points, frame to be, for the height we're going to have 30 points, and background is going to be a view, so we're going to create a Z stack here for the background with alignment as leading, and this is going to be a rounded rectangle with corner radius to be 5 points. Fill is going to be color dot gray dot opacity 0.6, and on the top there's going to be an image, system name, magnifying glass, and the foreground color for this is going to be color dot gray, and padding is going to be on the leading direction, about 10 points. All right, so this is basically our search box, and now when we have created this search text, and when we're gonna put these into the wherever we need it, we can actually put this. So for example, we're gonna need one for the main screen, for the home screen where we are performing the local search. So we're going to use this text search text view there, and we're also going to use inside the search view itself, where you get to add a new stock symbol into your watch list. So we're going to reuse the same search text view. That's why we created a separate component for that. Okay. All right. So that was the search text view. Next, we are going to create a quotes cell. Okay, and then we are also going to create many quotes cell. So we are done with everything that we need basically for the home screen, and then we're going to put all of them together inside the content view. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and create our search text. Not search text, quotes cell. Okay, so I'm gonna create a new file here. SwiftUI view quote cell, and this quote cell is going to take a quote. All right, we're gonna have an H stack with text quote dot symbol. We're gonna give it a font body, make it bold with a spacer, and then another spacer, VStack, text quote dot price. I'm gonna make this bold, quote dot change. Gonna give it a padding, and padding is gonna be in the horizontal direction. We're gonna give a frame width is gonna be 100. Background is going to be a rounded rectangle with corner radius as 5 points. We're gonna make a fill, and this fill is going to basically check for something. So we're gonna first convert the value of quote dot change into double, and we're gonna say if the value is greater than 0.0, then we're gonna use color dot green. Otherwise, we're gonna use color dot red. Okay, we're also gonna have the alignment for this, and that is going to be a trailing alignment. Okay, let's go ahead and fix this. So we're gonna let's create a new quote object, apple, open 135, anything that you like to have. I'm just putting some numbers in here. Okay, so let me go ahead and um, run the preview. So I just pressed Option Command P to run the preview, and this is what our quote is going to look like. Okay, so basically it's gonna have this stock symbol and your current price and your status of basically the change. Okay, and you can validate the change to be between green and red by changing these values from negative to positive. Okay, all right, so that's our quote cell, and next up is going to be the mini quote view, which is going to be presented whenever the news view is open. So we're going to basically launch it when news view is open. So let's go ahead and create that as well. All right, so let's go ahead and create our mini quote view. So I'm gonna click Command N, add a new file, and we are going to be naming this one mini quote view. All right, and this mini quote view is first of all it's going to receive an observed object of type stock quotes, which is which ideally is going to be stock quote manager, but in order to work with just a sample data, we're going to use mock quote manager. Okay, and let's go ahead and initialize that. So mock quote manager dot download, and we are simply going to just provide empty here because this is just a sample, like this. We are not doing anything with the stocks right here. So I'm just gonna fix this, that. Okay, and what we're gonna do here is first we're gonna have a scroll view. Okay, the scroll view is going to be scrolling in horizontal direction. Shows indicators is going to be false. Okay, and then we're gonna have an edge stack. So let's see what. Okay, yes, that is not gonna be. So we are just gonna call it here for now. Awesome. stock quote, like so. Okay. Let's go ahead and fix this. I think that should be good. Yes. Okay. Now we're gonna create an H stack for each stock quote dot quotes. Okay, and we get like individual quote access here. So we're gonna say quote in V stack. We're gonna display our text quote dot symbol. All right, gonna give it a font, sub headline. Okay, we go ahead and all right. Okay, so let's check out if our quote model is conforming to identifiable or not. So it is not conforming to identifiable. So what we can do is we can create an extension to quote and create a computed property. This extension is going to be conforming to identifiable, which needs an ID, and we're going to return UUID like so. Okay, so now if we go back, we should have this guy, yeah, fixed. Okay, let's go ahead and there we go. Okay, so we are getting a horizontal scroll view, and we are displaying our stock quote now. So what we can do is can make this bold. As you can see, our mock is helping us out here as well. We're gonna show the price, font. Let's give it a sub headline font. Okay, and we also want the text for the change. So quote dot change, and font once again is gonna be sub headline. Padding is gonna be in horizontal. Frame, let's give it a fixed width of 100. And background is going to be a rounded rectangle with corner radius to be 5 points. Can have a fill. Let's first cast our value, string value, to double, and we're going to check if the value is greater than 0.0. Then we're going to say color dot green, otherwise color dot red, and we also going to give this an alignment of trailing. Okay, now we're gonna give our VStack a background, and this is gonna be a rounded rectangle. And this rounded rectangle is gonna have a corner radius of maybe 10 points. It's gonna be a fill, and that's gonna be color dot white dot opacity 0.2. Okay, and the foreground color is gonna be white. Okay, now you don't see anything. That is fine because we can actually add a background just to show you that we have everything showing up nice and proper. Okay, and this is all gonna look uh, good when you start putting it together inside the content view, because content view is gonna have a black background. Okay, so that is our quotes view, mini quotes view. Okay, and next up we are going to be creating our home view inside the content view, and we are going to put together all these components that we have created inside that view. All right, so let's go ahead and work on our content view next. So we're gonna basically open the content view. At this point, there's not much into it, so let's go ahead and uh, create a few things. So one thing first thing we're gonna need is observed object for stock manager. Okay, and uh, uh, ideally it's going to be a stock quote manager, but again we're going to use, so let me create stock quote manager object so we don't forget that. So, and I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to create a mock quote manager right here. Okay, and then we are going to also need some private some state variables. So state private or stocks. So these are going to be the stock symbols that we're going to retrieve from our um, saved symbols list. For now, I'm just going to populate this with some values, but it's going to come from our user defaults. We're going to need a state for search term, and we're going to need a state for news when the news is open or close. So just a flag for that. We are also going to basically because Alpha Vantage allows only like few stocks or few API calls. What we're gonna do is we're gonna employ a technique where we're gonna only uh, get the stocks or download the stock status for those that are newly added. So we're not going to pull all the list or refresh all the lists just because uh, of the API limitation. But this is also going to help us in network usage, because in this case, what's going to happen is basically if your user is frequently adding multiple stocks tickers to their watch list, only the delta is going to be retrieved, not all the stock symbols. Okay, so I'm going to say stock, old stock, to keep a cache of stocks symbols that have been downloaded already. Now we're going to need an initializer, and this initializer is basically going to set the table view appearance for separator style. So separator style is going to be none. There's not going to be any separator. And UI table view UI table view dot appearance dot background color is going to be clear, and UI table view cell dot appearance dot background color is going to be clear as well. Okay, next we're going to have our body, and this body is going to be inside a Z stack. So first thing is going to be a Z stack, then there's going to be a color dot black, and then we're going to have a V stack with alignment, V stack with alignment leading. Now we're going to check if news is open, then we're going to show with animation mini quote view, and we're going to supply our stock manager. So I'm going to go back to this, and I'm gonna basically simply comment this out because we don't want to re-download values, because we are already gonna call this stock manager right here. So there's not going to be multiple calls. There's going to be one call that is going to cache all the codes, and if we pass the same instance of stock manager to our mini quote view, so it's going to use the same values that have been cached for us. Okay, now we're going to give it a foreground color to be white, padding at the top we're going to give it 50, frame we're going to give it height of news open, then 100, otherwise 0, and transition is going to be move from the edge top. Okay, so that is with animation. Okay, that is if the news is open. If the news is closed, we're gonna show with animation our header view with stocks, and stocks are gonna be basically the stocks that we have downloaded from the user default. In this case, they are statically created for now, and we can have some padding at the top of 50 points. Okay, we are also going to have a frame news open, so we're going to check if the news is open. If it is open, then we're going to have this one frames height as 0, so let's make sure this is height. Okay, and then for the transition we're going to say move, and this is also going to be from the top edge. All right, so that is our header view. Okay, then we're going to have a list. Okay, so we're going to have a list, and list is essentially your table view. So any properties that you have basically set for your table views appearance, so it's going to be applied on your list right here. You're going to have a group. This group is going to have search text view with search term binding, so that is going to be the search term, and we're going to say for each, and we need to create basically a helper function that is going to get us the quote. Okay, and basically this function is going to help us if the quotes are filtered due to the search term being applied or not. So we're going to create a private function to get quotes. It's going to return an array of quote. This is for local search, and we're going to simply return and say search term. If it's empty, then we're going to simply say stock manager dot give me quotes. Otherwise, stock manager dot quotes dot filter, and we're gonna apply the filter here, and we're gonna simply say first elements symbol dot lowercase dot contains search term dot lowercase. Okay, so this is basically going to search and return either the filtered result or all the results if our search term is empty. So now back in our for each, we're gonna basically get that get quotes, okay, and this is going to give us quote, each individual quote, access to each individual quote, and we're gonna call our quote cell here and supply the quote that we have just secured. All right. So on the list, we are going to set the list row background as color dot clear as well, and list row inset to be edges inset. Okay, and we're gonna say on appear. Now we want to fetch our data when the view appears, right? So we want that, and we also want another observer for on change. So whenever the stocks value is changing, we need to perform some operation here. Okay, so basically this is where we're gonna have whenever a user has saved a something new inside the user defaults, we want to actually find out what it is, get the difference between the new value and the old values that are saved, and then fetch the results from the API. So we're gonna do just that inside the onChange. Okay, now let's go ahead and create a function called fetch data. So private func fetch data, and this fetch data is going to take a symbols a string array called symbols. Okay, and it's basically simply going to call the stock manager dot download those symbols, and we don't need this completion because this is something in case we need to use it, so we're going to simply ignore anything inside. Okay, and we're going to call this fetch data right here, fetch data for stocks. And what we're going to do is we're going to say old stocks is equal to stock. So we're going to populate our old stocks as well. Now this is going to come in handy when we are calling the when we are saving data into user default. So we're going to come back to that. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and see if we can load the preview. Okay. So there we go. We have our preview loading, and let me go ahead and change the list style to be plain list style, foreground color to be white, and let's give it some padding in horizontal direction for about 32 points, and let's give some padding at the bottom as well for UI screen dot main dot bounds dot height times 0.21. So I want to actually make that bottom padding available because we're going to have a partial basically the news section being shown here, which is always going to stay here and it's going to expand from here. So we want to make sure that we have enough space for scrolling, so our stock symbols are not hiding behind this list. Okay, one thing that I want to actually do is edges ignoring safe area all. Okay, so we can cover our entire screen with our view. So there we go. So this is basically our content view, and our content view is looking great. And our content view is looking good. So that's our main screen. Okay, so next up we are going to start working on our news view. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with the news section of our app. So I'm gonna collapse the quotes section, and we're gonna go into news, and we have views and models created. So let's go ahead and create the news model first. Once again, I'm gonna create this news model per the news org newsapi.org. So I would recommend checking that out if you haven't seen the API itself. But yeah, for our purpose, let's go ahead and start with a Swift file, and we can name this one news response. Okay, and download from Foundation. Oh, sorry, import from Foundation is good. And we're gonna create first a struct news response, which is gonna conform to Codable protocol. Now, when the news articles return in News API, they are returned in a key called articles. So we're gonna say articles, and it returns an array of articles. Now we need that array. That array needs to be something. So for now, I'm just gonna say it's a string to avoid to basically remove all the errors and complaints that Xcode is gonna make. And we're gonna create another file. We're gonna call this one news, and this news file is gonna be a news struct, which is gonna be identifiable and codable. First, we're gonna create an ID to satisfy identifiable requirement, and this is going to be a computed property with UUID created. This is going to help us in our list and for each cases for each record to be identified individually. Next, our news is going to have title, and this is coming straight from the API response. URL to image, which is a string, and we're going to make this a string optional because sometimes the URL to image is not available. And then we're going to create a computer property. We're going to call this one image URL, which is going to be of type string, and this is the one that we're going to use instead inside our app. So we're going to say URL to image dot replacing occurrences off. So what happens sometimes, the image itself is returned as HTTP. It's not returned as HTTPS. So instead of applying exception for your network security at the transport layer within your app, what you can do simply is you can say, I want to have all the HTTP keywords within this URL to string be replaced by HTTPS : // okay, and if this is nil, then we need some fallback. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this image that I have found over the internet. It's actually just a news image. So let me show you what it is. It's just a news image background. So it's just an image with Apple News logo on it. So that's what this one is going to be. Okay, now I'm also going to create a struct here for news API. Okay, and this is where your key is going to go. So static let key, and you're going to paste your API key that you have received when you registered yourself into the newsapi.org. And I'm going to convert this into its own file. That way we can actually keep this separate. So newsapi.swift, and we'll take this and move it back into its own file. There we go. Okay, now so don't forget to replace this with the actual key. So just put your actual key that you have, API key that you have received here. Now one thing we want to do is, instead of these articles as a string array being returned, we are going to return news in here. Okay, and that is what the model for our news API is going to look like. Next up, we are going to create a news data manager. So we're going to create a manager for data download from the news API, and then we're going to start constructing its view. Okay. All right, so what I've done is I've copied my news API key and pasted it in here inside. So you should have done the same thing. Now, we're gonna create a new file at this level. So since it's just one file, I'm just gonna leave it at the news level, and we're gonna call this news download manager. Okay, now this is going to be the download manager, which is going to be responsible for downloading news API response. It's going to have a published variable called news articles. This is going to be an array of news model that we created. And then we're going to have a private let news URL string. And this is basically going to be the URL string that we're going to use for the news API. And this is going to be pretty static, because we already know that we want top headline for US and the category of business, and the API key, we're gonna simply say that we need, or you can get the API key from news API dot key, like so. Okay, and that's our news URL string. Okay, when we are initializing, we want to download. As soon as the object is initialized, we want to perform the download for the image. Now, download function does not exist, so let's go ahead and create that. And here again, we're gonna use our, let's go ahead and build first, because I want to see. Oh, okay, this all needs to go inside a class. News download manager, observable object, and there we go. Oh, my bad. Okay. All right. So we're gonna use our network manager once again, and we're gonna this time say network manager T, and the constraint is gonna resolve to news response. Okay, and we're gonna fetch from the URL string, and it's gonna be news URL string with the completion, which is going to be the result, and we're simply going to put a switch statement on result. For failure, we're going to say it's going to be the error. We're going to print the error. For success, it's going to be response, and we're going to dispatch queue on main async, and we're going to say self.news article. News articles is equal to response dot articles. Okay, so that is how we are gonna basically be able to download the news articles via news API. Okay, so eventually when the download is gonna finish, we're gonna have news articles, and those news articles are what we're gonna use to display on the UI. So next up, we're gonna create that bottom sheet view that we were looking at in the app, and we're gonna put our news elements inside that. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new view here, and we're gonna create a SwiftUI view. So select SwiftUI view, and we're gonna call this one bottom sheet view. All right, and we're gonna make this bottom sheet view kind of a generic view that can be basically called and passed in the content. So let's go ahead and modify the signature. But before we actually do that, we need an enum to store some of the constants for this. So we're gonna say file private enum. So we're gonna need radius, and these are basically constants that we're gonna need inside the bottom sheet view. So we're just gonna define them here. Okay. Now we're gonna modify our bottom sheet view to basically take content. So we're gonna have content of type view constraint, and this content is basically um, going to be passed in during the initialization. And we're going to create a few more variables. So for example, we're going to say create a binding to find out if the bottom sheet is open or not. We're going to have max height, min height, content itself, and we're going to have one variable for gesture state to capture the gesture state. So if user is swiping down, we want to capture that gesture state and basically provide the swipe functionality, drag drag functionality basically. All right. Um, let's go ahead and get offset calculated. So basically, whenever we have our view open, then we want to have some offset from the top. Say so. Basically, we can say like what the height is gonna be, and we're gonna compute that inside a private variable. And we're going to say if is open, then the offset is going to be 0. Otherwise, it's going to be max height minus min height. Right? And okay, so next variable that we're going to create is going to be basically the indicator view that we're going to use a line that we're going to display at the top where user can drag and drop or tap to basically open and close the view. So we're going to create private variable indicator, rounded rectangle with corner radius, and we're going to use our constants for radius. Gonna give it a fill, also gonna give it a frame, and we're gonna have on tap gesture on this, and we're gonna simply say is open, and we're gonna toggle that. Okay, so that's basically going to be our indicator, and then we can actually create our initializer. So during the initialization, we're gonna ask for is open value. It's gonna be a binding of type boolean and max height, along with a view builder. Okay, and basically we're gonna simply take our um, first of all, we're gonna take our max height and assign the max height into that. We're gonna compute the min height with max height times constant dot min height ratio. We're gonna have self dot content populated with the content that's been provided, and is open's internal property, the wrapped value is going to be assigned to the is open that's been passed to us. Okay, so yeah, we do want to call this as a function, so that is correct. um okay, so now what we're going to do is basically going to start defining our view. So our view is going to be wrapped inside a geometry reader, so we can actually read the width and height of the space that is available. So we're going to simply say geometry reader, and we're going to create a VStack inside with spacing, and we're gonna add some padding to the indicator, and we're also gonna have the content in this. Okay, for the frame, we are simply going to have width as so let's give it a geo, it's a geometry proxy, so geo dot size dot width, geo dot size dot height. Actually, height, we're gonna take the max height that we have being provided, and alignment is going to be at the top. Okay, and then we're going to have a background. The background is going to be a Z stack with color dot white and color dot black dot opacity 0.8. So all right, so that is going to be our background. Let's give it a corner radius. So corner radius is going to be the constant dot radius. Let's use that value. And for the frame of this view, after the background has been applied, we're going to say the height is going to be geo dot size dot height. Okay, and the alignment is going to be bottom. All right, and we also gonna apply the offset to display basically how much of the view is being displayed. So we're gonna say take the maximum value of self dot offset plus self dot translation. Okay, and 0. So whichever is the maximum between these two, take that. We also gonna have animation. Let's give it interactive spring animation, and we're gonna add a gesture to this, and this gesture is going to be drag gesture. So we're gonna simply say drag gesture, updating, and updating takes your gesture state. So this is where we're going to use the gesture state that we have created here for the translation. So we are simply going to say self dot translation, dollars translation, and this gives us, like, basically values for different states. So whenever gesture is being applied, like, at certain points, like, during those updates, you receive these values back. So you get the value for the gesture state and the state. Third parameter we're gonna ignore, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna simply say state is equal to value dot translation dot height. Okay, that's what we are interested in. And then when the updating uh, is ending, so let's see, we have the, so this is where it's ending. We're gonna say on ended. So whenever the gesture ends, we receive value back, and we want to actually store this value, or we want to do some computations basically. So first we want to say compute, like, if we need to snap or not, or if we need to close the drawer back if drag has not reached certain threshold. So we're gonna define that here. So we're gonna say snap distance. We can say snap distance is going to be self dot max height times constants dot snap ratio, and then we're gonna uh, create a guard to compute absolute value, and this absolute value is going to be between value dot uh, we're going to get the absolute value of the translation dot height, and we're going to basically see if it is greater than the snap distance. If not, then we can return from here. That means we're going to if if the if the view has not been dragged enough, like, to meet our snap distance. So if you take a look, that we have the snap distance computed. So let me see. Yeah, right here. So max height and snap ratio. So 25% of the max height has not been reached. Then we can snap the view back. So that's why we are returning here. Otherwise, we're gonna say is open value dot translation dot height less than 0. So just depending upon, like, what this if the value is less than 0, that means it's actually going to return true. So we're gonna keep it, like, set the is option value to true, otherwise false. Okay, so this is basically the bottom sheet view. So now we are ready to use this bottom sheet view inside a news sheet view, which is going to be basically uh, open um, inside our main view. So it's going to be sitting at the bottom, and user can either tap on the indicator to open it, or they can drag it out. Okay, so let's go ahead and work on our new sheet view. So new sheet view needs a few things. For example, like, it needs a header and listing and everything. So let's go ahead and create those sub views first, and then we're gonna create our new sheet view, and then we're gonna basically put everything together to take a look at it in action. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and create another view. So I'm going to create a news sheet view. Okay, it's going to be a SwiftUI view. And this new sheet view needs a few things. So let's go ahead and create first a header. So Okay, before we do that, let's go ahead and populate this, and we're gonna create placeholders, and we're gonna basically come back. So binding for news open. So basically to get the state if the news is open or not, and we're gonna use this value to display. To display not only the sheet but also to trigger our mini quote view to be displayed or not. Okay, we can have observed object for news manager, which is going to be supplied to us by the caller. So mainly a content view is going to create the instance of news download manager, and it's going to supply it to news sheet view. Okay, then we're going to need an initializer for news open. Binding is going to be the boolean, and news manager is going to be news download manager. And there are a few settings that we need to do. So basically, once again, we have our table view. So because we're going to be using a list, so we want to make sure our list has the appearance of, like, subwritten style to be none and background colors to be clear. So let's go ahead and create those. So UI table view dot appearance dot separator style. So separator style to be none. UI table view dot appearance dot background color to be clear. UI table view cell dot appearance dot background color to be clear as well. We're also going to initialize our news open. So news open with news open that's being supplied to us, the variable, and news manager with the news manager that's been given to us during the initialization. Okay, now for the body part, what we're going to do is we're going to call our bottom sheet view. Okay, and bottom sheet view, if you remember, it takes is open, so we're going to say news open is going to be that state that we're going to pass in. For the max height, we're going to say it's going to be UI screen dot main dot bounds dot height times 0.89. So 89% of the height is going to be the max height for the bottom sheet view. Then we're going to have a Z stack inside with color dot white, and a rectangle which is going to have a fill with color dot black dot opacity 0.8. Okay, and then we're gonna have a V stack with alignment as leading. Okay, and this is where header view is gonna go. We're gonna create that. Then we're gonna have a spacer, and then we're gonna have a list view that's gonna go here, and then we're gonna have our padding for this, and we do wanna ignore safe area, so we're gonna say edges ignoring safe area all. Okay, or let's do vertical. There we go. Okay, so for this I'm gonna move this, and yeah, let's go ahead and build to make sure everything builds. And basically now it's time to create our header view and then our list view to make this view complete. All right, so let's go ahead and create a view for our news header. So I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call this one select SwiftUI view news header view. Okay, and this news header view is going to be simple. It's going to be just few views. So we can have a V stack with alignment, some text, Let's give it a font title, foreground color as white. We're going to use Apple logo from the SF symbol to use as an image, and we're going to have text, and we're going to say this is from Apple News, just to basically just to copy what we have in these actual real stock news. But if you want, you can provide it as news API, sort of like that. So yeah, let's do news API. Okay, let's give it a font of title 2 and a foreground color of gray, and we want to create another rounded rectangle. So rounded rectangle, this is gonna work as a separator. So we're gonna give it a corner radius of 2, and we're gonna fill this with color dot gray, and we're gonna give it a frame with height of 1. Okay, so that is basically our news view. So let me go ahead and see if we can actually look at this. Let me go ahead and do, so okay, so this is what it's gonna look like. As you can see, the top news is not being displayed because it's on white. So I'm gonna add a background just to show you what it looks like. Color dot black. Okay, and there we go. So this is what our header is going to look like. Now this is gonna go on the background, which is going to be black in color, so it's going to be visible just fine. So this is our news header view, and next we're going to create our news list view, and then we're going to put everything together. All right, so let's go ahead and create our news list view as well. So we're going to call this a SwiftUI view. We're going to take that SwiftUI view template, and we're going to call this news list view. All right, and this news list view is going to be taking a few things. So let me remove this because otherwise we're gonna have to provide all those things. So observed object is going to be a news manager. Once again, we're going to use the same instance of news manager that's been supplied to us by the caller, which is going to be the content view in our case. And we're going to have a state, which is going to be show on Safari. So basically we're going to launch a Safari view at this point, and we want to keep a track of that, so we can supply that state. And we're going to have a private variable for selected article. So this is basically because what happens, we're gonna open a sheet, and I forgot var here. That is correct. Okay, so what happens, basically we open a sheet, and when we open a sheet, its state is pretty static. So once its state is set, it's not gonna change. So what we're gonna do, so like, basically what's gonna happen is whenever you open a news article, you click on any other news article after that, they are all gonna be opening the same basically same article, because the link has been set. So what we are doing is we are storing the selected article inside a local variable, and what that local variable is gonna help us basically is to keep a track on which article has been selected, and then we can actually update the or get the state for that, and display that particular article. So you're gonna find out what we are doing once we do that. So we're gonna create a VStack, and it's going to be inside a scroll view, and scroll view is going to be in vertical direction. So vertical scroll shows indicators is going to be false. Okay, and then we're going to have a for each. Okay, for each on news manager dot news articles, and we're going to have articles or article that we're going to get, right? And inside the for each, this is going to be the cell, and it's basically a VStack. So alternatively, so I'm just going to create the entire view here, but if you prefer, you can create a cell view and then supply the article into that. I think that'll be a better way to do it. So yeah, there's something that you can take it as a challenge to refactor this, create a cell out of this view. Excuse me. Okay, and then we can have our text article dot title. Gonna make it bold. Foreground color, let's give it white. Fixed size. So we want to fix a size to basically say it's gonna be a fixed size in horizontal. Vertical direction is going to be true. That means horizontally it's going to be fixed, but vertically it can grow to show multiple lines. So our cell will grow as needed. Now there's one thing that we need to create here is the image that we have to download from the internet. So async image is something that we're gonna call here, and so I'm just gonna leave a placeholder for that, and then we're gonna create our content shape as rectangle. And a reason we are doing that, so our entire cell can be tappable, because if you don't do this part right here, then only the part which is which has some content is tappable, which sort of like creates an issue if, like, let's say your image is big and your the news article title has a lot of empty space at the bottom, and if user taps on that empty space, nothing is going to happen. So this actually makes sure that when user taps on it, the content size is rectangle, so the whole cell becomes tappable. Okay, all right. So we are going to give the on tap gesture as well, and this on tap gesture is going to basically populate the selected article. So we're gonna say selected article is equal to article, and show on Safari, we're gonna toggle that. Okay, then we're gonna create a sheet. Okay, and we're gonna create a sheet that takes is presented, and we can simply say show on Safari is going to be the presented boolean that can be toggled to dismiss, and we're going to create basically a function to load news. Okay, so we're going to come back to that. All right. So after this, we're gonna create a rounded rectangle with corner radius as 10. So this is basically a divider that we are creating. Fill color is gonna be color dot white dot opacity 0.2, and let's give it a padding. And padding, let's give it a horizontal direction 450 points, and frame is gonna be with height as 1. Okay, now let's go ahead and first create that function. So I'm going to create a private function, load news for article news. All right, and gonna say some view, and we want to return a Safari view. So let me go ahead and return a text for now. And what we can do is let's go ahead and create a reference for the Safari view. So what we're going to use is a library that's actually that's called Better Safari View, and we can reference it using Swift Package Manager. So I'm gonna just create add package, and I'm gonna enter the URL, and the framework itself is called Better Safari View. So that's what it is. So if you Google Better Safari View, you're gonna find it, and I'm gonna click next. It's gonna basically find that, and let's go ahead and resolve that dependency, and we're gonna add that into our project. So once we have added into our project, it's gonna show up here in Swift packages, and now what we can do is basically we can simply come back here, um, make sure to import Safari. Let's see, do we need to import? Yeah, better Safari view. There we go, it started showing up. So we can simply call this Safari view. There you go, Safari view. Okay, and Safari view takes URL and configuration. Reason I thought of using uh, this Better Safari view instead of creating our own, because this handles the authentication and stuff for you, so it's pretty powerful. And so you can check out the documentation and see what it can do. For our use case, we are only going to be using the URL, so we're going to simply create the URL, and we're going to get the article, get the URL from that. We also want to make sure that we replace occurrences of HTTP colon double slash with HTTPS, because sometimes, like, the links that are returned are HTTP, even though the provider itself is supporting or supports uh, the HTTPS. It just doesn't load. So this way we can actually request the HTTPS version of the news article link. Okay, so we're gonna say load news, and we're gonna say get selected article, otherwise take the article. Okay, this way we will be able to launch sheet with different values or different selected items. Okay, now the only thing that's left in this view before we finish this is this async image. So let's go ahead and create our utility basically for this async image, and we're gonna also create for the async image, we're gonna create image caching for the caching strategy, and we're gonna create image loader, cache key, and everything. And once we are finished with that, we're gonna come back and create our asynchronous image instance here. And basically we're going to use this asynchronous image to display the network image that has been that's been, like, associated with the news article. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and create our async image. So let me go ahead and actually create a new folder under utils, and what we're going to do is we're going to name this folder async image. Okay, and we're going to need a few files, so let's go ahead and create those files first. So we're going to need, so all of them are going to be Swift files, and first one we're going to name is going to be image loader. Okay, and then let's create another one, and this one is going to be image cache. We're going to create one for cache key. So let's go ahead and create image cache key, and there's going to be one for async image. So I'm gonna name this async image. Okay, so let's go ahead and first work on our image loader, which is basically going to be downloading the image for us from the network. So I'm gonna go, first thing I'm gonna do is import combine and import UI kit. Okay, and then we're gonna create a final class image loader. This is gonna be observable object, and it is going to publish image, which is going to be of type UI image. Okay, we're going to also create a private privately set variable is loading to indicate if the image is currently in loading state or not. And we're going to have a few more variables. For example, we're going to need one for URL. We're going to create URL, and we're going to create one for cache. This is image cache, and we haven't created it yet. So let's go ahead and create image cache so we can populate that variable. Okay, so I'm gonna import from UI kit. First, let's create a protocol image cache. All right, and we're gonna create a subscript over URL. Right, and this is going to return a UI image optional, and this is gettable and settable. Okay, then we're gonna create a temporary image cache. Okay, and we're gonna create the cache from NSCache. NSCache takes NS URL and UI image, so we're gonna get that, and we're gonna create that cache. We're gonna set the count limit for cache for 100 items, and we're gonna also to set the total cost limit for the size. So we're gonna say it's gonna store 100 MBs. So basically times 100. Okay, and we're gonna return this cache right there. Right, and we need to conform to this image cache protocol, so we need to provide the definition for subscript. So we're gonna get the object if cache entry exists for the URL, then we return that value via get. Otherwise, we set the first we check if the new value is nil. If it is nil, that means we are calling to remove that entry from the cache. So we're gonna simply say cache dot remove object for key as ns URL, right? And let's make this optional. Okay. Otherwise, we're gonna say take the cache and set object on it with new value unwrapped, because that means if we reach here, um, that means, like, the new value is not nil. And for the key, we're gonna say it's gonna be key as ns url. Okay, so that is our cache. So let's go back, and we should have our image cache resolved. Let's try it again. Image cache, there you go. Okay, and then we're gonna need one variable to store cancellables. So we're gonna say private var cancellables, or cancelable is gonna be any cancelable, optional type. Okay, to store basically our cancelable for our download publisher. And now we're gonna say private static let image processing queue. So we're gonna create its own dispatch queue with label, and we're gonna name this one com.devtechie.image processing. Okay, um, and then we're gonna create our initializer. So initializer is going to take a URL, a cache, and image cache. It can default to nil, and we're simply gonna assign self values to this. So URL self.cache. All right. For dinit, we are going to call a function cancel. Okay, we haven't created that, so let's go ahead and create that. All right. We are also gonna need a function to load the image, and we're gonna say guard if is not is loading already. So image is not, if image is already loading, that means we should return from here. We should not start another process of loading an image. Okay, and if not, then proceed and first get the image from cache. See if cache has the image for the given URL. If it is, then assign self.image to the image that we have retrieved from the cache, and return from here. Okay. Otherwise, create a URL session dot share dot data task publisher for URL that's been given to us. Okay, and now we're gonna create a map on this for UI image, and we're gonna use first parameter dot data from that to basically retrieve the value that we have received out of the URL session data task. So it's going to retrieve that, convert that into a UI image, and we're going to say replace error with nil. Okay, and we also going to say handle events. So we're going to handle events, and let me put them on each individual lines so we can organize them better. Okay, all right. So first one is we're gonna actually need few functions. So first, let's get the reference for weak self, and we're gonna say self dot on start call this function on start. So we don't have that function, so let's go ahead and create that. Okay, we're gonna populate these functions in a minute. Um, for receive subscription, we're gonna say on start, and for receiving output, we're gonna actually store it in the cache. So we are once again going to get the reference for self, a weak reference for self. And we're going to say cache should store first parameter that's been received, which is going to be the image that you have received. Okay. All right. So for receive completion, we're gonna say it's gonna be weak self and it does have default parameters that comes in, and we're gonna simply say on finish. Okay, we're gonna create that on finish function. So func on finish. All right. So on cancel, we're gonna simply create that reference, and we're gonna say weak self in self dot on finish. Okay. All right. And this one we can remove on request. All right. So what we're gonna do is we need to create this function as well. So go ahead, and this function we need to create. So now let's go ahead and create that. I guess right here. Okay. This is going to be a private function, cache, and this is going to take an image, UI image, and it's simply gonna say image dot map cache at the URL to first parameter that's being passed in. So that is going to be resolved, and this error is going to go away because we haven't subscribed everything. But let's go ahead and fill these before we forget. So for cancel, we're going to say cancelable dot cancel. For on start, we are simply going to set the is loading to true, and for on finish, we're going to set is loading to false. Okay, and right here we're going to say subscribe on, and then we have this queue that we have created, so we can actually subscribe on this queue. So subscribe on, and this takes the scheduler, so we're going to say capital S self, that's representing the not the object but the type, dot image processing queue. Receive on is basically on which thread you want to receive your output, so we're gonna say we're gonna receive it on main queue, and sync is gonna basically give us the value, so sync receive value, and we can simply write a trailing closure here with weak self reference, because we get the value directly, so we just take that. Okay, right. So, and we are already storing the output into cancelable, so that is all set. So basically this is what we have for image loader and image cache, and now the cache key is it's something simple. So cache key is simply going to be an environment key. So we're gonna import from SwiftUI. Gonna create a struct image cache key, environment key. Okay, and say static lat default value is image cache, temporary image cache. I'm gonna initialize that, and we're gonna say extension environment values. We're gonna simply set image cache. So we're gonna say environment value can access image cache, and whenever we call get on it, we get the image cache key and we return that. Otherwise, when set is called, we're gonna simply say image cache key dot self is equal to new value that we have received. All right, so that's those are like main components for your image cache. Now next we're gonna create a async image view. So let's go ahead and create that. So this is gonna be SwiftUI view, and we're gonna create a struct async image placeholder view. We're gonna have of type view, and this entire view is going to be conforming to view as well. Now we're going to have a state object, private var loader, image loader, private let placeholder is going to be placeholder type that we haven't created yet, so we're going to create that. Actually it's going to be placeholder view, yeah, sorry. So this guy right here is going to be our placeholder. That's what we're going to supply, and private let image is going to be a UI image, which is going to return an image, a SwiftUI view image. Then for the initialization, we're going to have URL. We're going to have two view builders. So one for placeholder, which is going to return placeholder view, and another one is going to be view builder for the image itself, which is going to return image dot init UI image. All right, that's our initializer. We're gonna say self dot placeholder is equal to the placeholder, and we're gonna call that, and self dot image is equal to image, and for the loader we're gonna say state object, and we're gonna get its wrapped value from image loader. URL is going to be the URL, and cache is going to be something that we're going to access from the environment. And since we have created environment key image cache, we're going to leverage that and get the wrapped value for that. Okay, so this is going to give us the temporary cache in this case. Then we're going to write our body, and we're going to simply have our content, which is going to be called an onAppear. We're gonna perform loader.load. Okay, content is not created yet, so let's go ahead and create that. It's gonna be a private variable which is called content. It returns some view, and this is gonna be just a group, and we're gonna check if loader dot image is not equal to nil. So we're gonna say if it's not equal to nil, then get the loader dot image unwrapped and return that. Otherwise, return the placeholder. Okay, and that is our async image. Now we need to do one final thing into our list view. So if we go into our news list, yeah, this is where we left async image placeholder. So let's go ahead and get the async image placeholder, and we're gonna call async image dot init, and we're gonna take the overload that takes a placeholder and gives us the image as well. So we're gonna say URL is going to be the URL that's gonna come from article dot image URL. Okay, for the placeholder, we are simply going to have a rounded rectangle with corner radius 10, and we're going to create a fill for that, color dot white dot opacity 0.2. Okay, for the image, we get the image back, and then we simply say take the image, create an image view out of UI image overload of image view, and return a resizable image. Now what this gives us is basically ability to work with an image. So async image is going to give us the image that we're going to basically apply all the other modifiers to. So for example, scaled to fill, and gonna give it a frame width of 100 and height of 160, and the corner radius is gonna be 10. So I'm gonna match basically the placeholder corner radius to the image corner radius. Okay. All right, so that's about it for our news list. So we'll try and see how does it look, and basically debug that by including it into the content view next. All right, so now our news list is ready. Let's go back to new sheet view, and our new sheet view should actually include both the header view and the list. So we're gonna simply say news header view here for the placeholder, and we're gonna replace this placeholder with news list view, and we're gonna provide the news manager right there. Okay, so we're gonna supply that. All right, next let's go into our content view, and inside the content view, what we need to do basically is we need to get a news manager, news download manager instance. So let's go at the top, and right where you have your observed object for stock manager, we're gonna create a new observed object for news manager. Okay, and this is going to be news download manager. All right, and we're gonna set this one to true for now. Okay, and then we're gonna come back, and down at the bottom where we have our this bottom sheet, right, we're gonna insert news sheet view. For the news open, we're going to provide news open binding value, and for the news manager, we're going to provide the news manager that we have received. So now let me go ahead and launch it inside the canvas and try to load it in there. So if that gets loaded, that's good. Otherwise, there we go. Okay, so it is loading. Let me zoom out a bit and run. And there you go. So you have your news articles showing up, right? And if you click on any of these, you should be able to launch Safari and open those news articles. So let me go ahead and click a couple of these. So there we go. Okay, cool. So our news is now loading up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back here and set this to false, because we by default we want to show the news at the bottom. So we want to make sure that news shows up properly, and our list of stocks show up properly as well. Okay, so this is the view that we're gonna basically see when you have your app opened initially. So news is not going to be opened, and then let's go ahead and click and see if we can click on it. Yeah, so that's perfect. Okay, dismiss and everything is also working fine. All right, cool. Okay, so that okay, so now we have, like, our news ready. So the last component that we have to work now is going to be the search, um, and we're going to basically work on this. So this for search functionality is already done. Sorry, not this one, but this add button. So when you tap on the add button at this point, um, what do we do with the add button? Okay, so that's in news header, not in news header, actually it's in the quotes. So I'm going to collapse the news section and go into views for, and there you go. So right now we just do show search, and she just presented, and we are doing something on dismiss. So let's go ahead and start working towards our search control, where we're gonna launch a new view for users to search stock symbol, and then what we're gonna do basically is we're going to add those stock symbols into the list of stocks that our user is watching into the watch list, save that into user defaults, and basically load that into our main app UI. Okay, right, so that's what's going to be. All right, so let's get our search set up. So I'm going to collapse quotes and open search, and for the models we don't have anything, so let's go ahead and create a new file here. First one is going to be search response, so we're going to create search response, and import from foundation is fine. We're going to create a struct search response, which is going to be conforming to Codable protocol, and we're going to have fast matches. And this is the keyword that actually the key that is returned as a part of response, and it's going to have something called search. Okay, search is something that we haven't created yet, so let's go ahead and create that. Let me collapse this as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and create a new file, and we're going to call this one search, and this one is going to be another struct called search, which is going to conform to Codable and identifiable. Okay, first we're gonna need the ID, so we're gonna say it's gonna be computer property of UUID, which is gonna be returning a new UUID. For the symbol, it's gonna be a string, and it's gonna be name, property of type string, and type of string. So these three values are present in the response itself, so that's why I'm using that, but they don't represent the exact name that we have defined here. So we're going to create coding keys, coding key, okay, and we're going to have few cases. So first one is going to be for symbol, then there's going to be for name, and then type, which is represented by 3 dot space type in the JSON response. Okay, so that is our model for the search, and if you go back into the search response, this should resolve now. Okay, so we have like everything building successfully. So what I'm going to do is next, let's go ahead and create our search manager. So let's go ahead and create a new file, and we're going to call this one search manager. Okay, and we're going to create a final class here. And this is going to publish an array of searches, so like search items that we have found. Then we're gonna have a function called search stocks, which is going to take keyword to be searched, and we're gonna simply call our network manager with search response, and we're gonna call fetch on that. URL is gonna be API dot, let's see, API dot symbol search URL for keyword. Okay, and this is going to give us result. Okay, and we are simply okay, so we know that we are passing a URL, so we can force unwrap this one, and we are missing something. All right, okay, now we're gonna simply say switch statement one result, and we're gonna say if the failure happens, then take that error into a variable, and we're gonna print that error. In case of success, we get the response back, and we're gonna simply say dispatch queue dot main dot async, and best matches. Okay, that's gonna give us the all the search results. Okay, so anytime we need to search for a stock symbol, we simply call this function, give it a keyword, and it's gonna return us in a published variable. It's gonna return us all the results, all the stock searched values that we got back. Okay. All right, so next up, we are going to implement its view, and before we implement view, we're gonna need a couple of helper utilities. So we're gonna first create those. All right, so let's go ahead and create a couple of utilities. So I'm gonna create on a file on util, and this one we're gonna call user defaults manager. And this user defaults manager is going to be a class which is going to help us store and retrieve user defaults. So user defaults manager, gonna create private static let symbol key, and this is basically how we're gonna save. This is going to be the key against which we're going to save our value inside user defaults. So I'm just going to say symbol underscore key. It can be any string. And then saved symbols is going to be an array of string. And we're going to make this a singleton. So we're going to say shared user defaults manager. And we're going to we're gonna set its initializer to be private, so no one can initialize it. And we're also gonna call a function get inside, and get is a function that's not being created yet. So let's go ahead and create that, and we're gonna first try to access user defaults dot standard user default dot array for key. So we're gonna say capital S self symbol key as an array of string. If we can get that, then we're gonna save that into our saved symbols. Okay, and that's what our get is gonna have. Okay, and then we're gonna also have a set function, which is going to take a symbol, and this symbol is going to be first appending this new symbol inside the saved symbol, and it's going to call user default and set the value. So it's just going to be calling dot set. Actually, we're going to use the set any. Okay, set self dot saved symbols for key capital S self symbol key. So that is going to be our set operation for the user defaults manager. Now there's one more utility that we need. Basically, we're gonna have old stocks array and new stocks array. So we need some way to basically sort of like get the delta or the difference between those two arrays. So we're gonna create a simple extension on array. So we're gonna say array plus extensions, and this file is going to basically host an extension over array where element is hashable, and I'm going to create a function difference, and it will return an array of element as well. So we're gonna say that this set is gonna be the set from self. So we're gonna leverage the set operation, and we're gonna use symmetric difference of set to basically get the difference. So other set is going to be the set that we have been passed, that we are comparing against, and we're going to return an array of this set dot symmetric difference other set. That okay, so that is gonna give us the difference between two different arrays. Okay, so only the delta that we're gonna get. All right. So now once we have these two utilities, let's go ahead and work on the search view itself. So we can actually create a view under search, and we're gonna work. All right. For the search manager, we're gonna create a new view, and this is going to be a SwiftUI view, search view. And here, what we're going to do is first we're going to create a state variable. Search term empty, and we're going to also have an observed object of search manager, and we're going to initialize that. Okay, inside the body, we're going to have a Z stack, and this Z stack is going to have color dot black dot opacity 0.8. There's going to be a V stack. Inside that V stack, we're going to have an H stack, and search text view is going to be with the search term. Okay, so this is the same search text view that we have used in past for our local search. So this is going to be observed object, not observable object. Okay, now next to this search text view, we're going to have a button. This button is going to have an action. Okay, and the action is going to be calling search manager dot search stocks with search term. Okay, and it's going to have the label. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix this. Let's see if we fix. Okay, all right. Yeah, should be fine. Let's see. System name, and we're gonna use arrow, triangle, right, circle, fill. Okay, let me go ahead and build it to see. Okay, all right. So the error is gone, and the font is going to be title, and foreground color is going to be white. All right, let me start the canvas, and there we go. This is what it looks like right now. And what we're gonna do is right after the button and the H stack, we're gonna have a spacer. Okay, so it's gonna push the view up, and underneath we're gonna have a scroll view. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a scroll view. All right, and inside this scroll view, we're gonna have for each on search manager dot searches item in, and then there's going to be an H stack with V stack. So this is our actual cell for the search results. Okay, and this V stack is going to have alignment of leading. Okay, and there's going to be a text. So we can display the symbol with font title, and let's make it bold. And we're also gonna display the type of the stock symbol. So if it's EDF or a stock entity, we're gonna display that. Font type, we're gonna give a font body, and underneath there's gonna be a spacer. Okay, and under the spacer, we're gonna have a text item dot name and another spacer with button, and we're gonna have action on the button, and action is gonna be calling user defaults manager dot share dot save dot set, and we're gonna set that symbol. Okay, and for the label, we are going to say it's going to be image system name plus dot circle dot fill dot font. Font is going to be title. Okay, and we're going to give this a foreground color of white, and then a rounded rectangle with corner radius as 10, and fill is going to be color dot white. So color dot white, and frame is going to have a height of 1. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and give this some padding at the top, maybe about 50 points, and padding in horizontal direction for about 16 points. And we also want to set edges, ignoring safe area for all, to cover the full screen. Okay, so let me go ahead and hit play, and let's go ahead and type maybe Google, and we're gonna click on search, and there we go. We have our results coming in. So these are type equity, that means they're stock, and if you I guess there's stock ETF called QQQ, I believe. Yeah, so there you go. So you have, like, you get ETFs, so you get different types, and you get their full name, their company name, right? And the plus button is gonna save the value into your user default. Okay, with that, our search view is complete. So I guess next is to include this search and call it upon the content views plus button click, and then make sure that everything gets saved into user default, and when we get the values basically back, we actually retrieve them on content load. Okay, so that's gonna be next. All right, so let's go ahead and tie everything together. So we have our search ready now. So what we can do is we're gonna go back to our content view, and if you recall, in the content view at the top, we were getting these stocks, right? So instead, what we're gonna do is we are going to use user defaults manager dot share dot saved symbols. So we can get that. So that's going to be the list of symbols. Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look what we got. Okay. Cool. So those are going to be saved symbols that we're going to get and stored in stocks. That's first thing. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that whenever we are fetching, we are fetching for current stocks, and we are also caching those current stocks into old stock. Now, how we're going to use that is basically we're going to simply call fetch data whenever we save new stock value into the user defaults, and we're going to call stocks dot difference, the new function that we created inside array, and we're going to supply our old stock here. And we once again want to refresh our value of old stock inside by replacing that with the values of stocks. Okay. All right, so I guess that's all we need to do in here. And let's go ahead and collapse this, and I'm going to go back inside quotes and inside view, and in the header. So header should be the place where we have basically created our where we're gonna launch our search from. So let's go ahead and take a look what we got here. So we have our formatter, okay, our stocks, and on the button click we show search and sheet here. So this is where we first need to say whenever the sheet is launched, we're gonna basically toggle show search. And first thing we're gonna do is whenever this sheet is dismissed, we're gonna simply say sales.stocks is equal to user defaults dot shared dot saved symbols. Okay, and for the content, instead of showing the text, we're gonna show our search view. Okay, all right, so I believe that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and do one last thing. So I'm gonna remove this mock download, and it's time to basically test the app. So we're gonna run. Stock Manager is there, so see what. Okay, so mini quote view should stake as a stock manager. Yeah. Okay, so that is good. Now let's go ahead and run this. We cannot build. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna just remove this part. All right, and I'm gonna build again, and let's see if we can launch this app inside our. So it's now launched inside our simulator, and first thing you're gonna do is click on this plus button, and I'm gonna search for Apple, maybe. Okay, so APLE is Apple Hospitality, AAPL is Apple Inc. So I'm gonna click plus on that and dismiss, and there we go. So we have our Apple stock showing up, and next we're gonna search for Google, and there you go. Google is showing up. So there are two. I think this is the main one, so I'm gonna add that and dismiss, and there we go. So yeah, so there you have it. Your full stock app is working. Your mini quote view is working. Your news section is working. So yeah, so this is it. We have reached the end. Once again, thank you so much for sticking along. It was a really big project that we have tackled so far, and I hope you learned a whole bunch and enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your ongoing support, and keep supporting us the way you have been. So thank you so much.